فألقاها فإذا هي حية تسعى قال خذها ولا تخف سنعيدها سيرتها الأولى واضمم يدك إلى جناحك تخرج بيضاء من غير سوء آية أخرى لنريك من آياتنا الكبرى اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعلني وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي اشدد به أزري وأشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد.
Can you give me that mic stand back? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi alladhi allama bil qalam, allama al insana ma lam ya'lam, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam. In the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, all praise is due to God, the one who taught humanity by the pen, taught humanity that which they did not know, and may blessings and peace be upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Thank you for those who are coming for the first time, for those who came Thursday night or Friday night or both Thursday and Friday night. Thank you very much for coming back. I'm glad that I didn't scare you away. May Allah bless you in all of your intentions to be here. It's good to see some familiar faces. And I recognize people I don't know, but I recognize some of your faces from previous nights, so alhamdulillah. On the first night, I talked a little bit about history and historiography, the practice of writing history and dealing with some of the challenges that we face in the process of writing history. And on the second night, I talked about theology and spirituality to a certain extent through the medium of reflecting upon the tasbih of Sayyidah Fatima and the meaning of the adhkar, words such as Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar. And tonight I'm going to bring those two together and talk about the theology of social justice and fighting oppression. So if you had paid attention, thank you so much. Salawat. Can everyone hear me okay? So, the theology of social justice and fighting oppression. I mentioned, for example, some of the challenges of reflecting upon the history of Sayyidah Fatima, and I connected it, last night I mentioned a book called The Black Women's History of the United States of America, and recommended it as a way to carry your Fatimiyyah remembrance outside the walls of the masjid into the society in which we live. But I will expound upon that in more detail tonight. So I'll begin with reflecting upon Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 135. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا صدق الله العلي العظيم. O you who have faith, be maintainers of justice and witnesses for the sake of Allah, even if it should be against yourselves or your parents and near relatives, and whether it be someone rich or poor, for Allah has a greater right over them. So do not follow your desires, lest you should be unfair, and if you distort the testimony or disregard it, Allah is indeed well aware of what you do. Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullahi alayhi, may Allah have mercy on him, states in Tafsir al-Mizan, quote, to stand with justice means to enforce it, to maintain it. Maintainers of justice are those who fully and perfectly establish justice without deviating therefrom because of some low desire or sentiment, fear or greed or other such factors. This virtue is the most perfect cause and nearest factor for following the truth and protecting it from getting lost. So justice is something that all human societies on some level are concerned with, and so it is natural that the message of the last prophet to all of humanity, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace and blessings be upon him and his family, is deeply concerned with the question of justice. Justice being something that is part of the warp and woof of creation, and is encapsulated in the fact that, in so many Islamic theologies, al-adl al-ilahi is, considered a fundamental aspect of theology, divine justice, right? How does the justice that we seek in this world relate to the justice that we expect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, transcendent and glorified, right? In many respects, one could say that the human search for justice, even if that's encapsulated in a secular form, right? So, for example, some people are familiar with Marxism as a form of seeking justice and economic means. Many, many people have remarked that Marxism is a type of religion, and people who follow it, did so very passionately, especially in the 20th century, to the point where it actually replaced their religion, right? Even in my wife's extended family, there was one uncle in India who, for a time, was a communist, and then became a Muslim again, so to speak, in the sense that in his mid-20th century Marxist fervor, he sort of saw them as either or, right? But stepping back from that mid-20th century standpoint, one can see in that pursuit of justice, the longing for fairness, the longing for equity, the longing for justice, the longing for the end of imperialism, the longing for the end of oppression, right? And those are things that find their expression in what we hope for from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, When we talk about Allah being just, we talk about having free will, that Allah is not going to punish us for something that He forces us to do, that we're not predeterminists. Right? Why do we say that? Because otherwise we know instinctually Allah would be a tyrant if He were to force us to do something and then punish us for what we did. Right? So in the most basic and fundamental sense, we know that we have some choice in the matter. We have some free will in the matter. And we expect that Allah will treat us fairly. And we compare that deep faith that we have in Allah's justice to the unfairness that we experience on this earth, whether from people close to us or people far away from us, whether things that happen to us directly or things that we see happening to people on the other side of the earth. So justice is part of Islam. Justice is part of our theology. Justice is part of our longing as human beings. I would say that the most palpable need and desire that as a student of world history I see in human history, it's the desire for justice. Right? The desire for justice that leads to slave rebellions. Right? Whether it's the Zenj rebellion in southern Iraq, whether it's the Haitian Revolution, right? Whatever historical moment you want to talk about, Spartacus back in the Roman Empire. Maybe some of you have seen the movie Spartacus. I'd rather see a movie about the Haitian Revolution, but that's neither here nor there. Point being that, what are those people doing, right? Of course they're fighting for their worldly needs, but in a way, we can interpret that as a prayer to the heavens, a prayer to the just for support in overcoming human injustice. And this is part of Fatimiyyah, right? Fatimiyyah makes sense to us because we have a sense of justice, right? And when we see Sayyidah Fatima and her claim to Fadak being denied, it frustrates us, right? As human beings, not as Shia Muslims, as human beings. To see a woman go and say, this is my right, this is my claim, and then being denied it. It makes us mad. It makes us sad. It makes a fire burn in our hearts as human beings. Just the way that, to reiterate the example that I mentioned yesterday, that when you see that the only trace of a person's memory in history is the number 87 on the slave ship record. Number 87 died today and I threw her overboard. That doesn't sit right with us as human beings, and we don't need wahi to know that. I didn't even know what the Quran was, and I saw a movie like Mississippi Burning when I was probably 10 years old. I didn't sit down to watch it. If you've ever seen it, don't show it to a 10-year-old. I walked into the room, I think most of my parents have been watching it, or my sisters, I don't know, and I was traumatized, right? Did I need revelation to feel that way? No. Allah had put something in my heart as a human being. That's my son, so he had to get his stuff. Allah had put something in my heart as a human being, a sensitivity of the qalb, of the heart, that responded to injustice spontaneously, organically, holistically, naturally. So part of our theology is recognizing that. And I just want to explore that. Now, alhamdulillah, we have a woman in our community. How many of you, raise your hand if you know who Mahjabeen Dala is? So only a few, mashallah. But she's a member of this community for years. She has a book coming out from Cambridge University Press, which is a very top academic publisher, entitled Feminist Theology and Social Justice in Islam, a study on the sermon of Sayyidah Fatima. It's coming out in about a month. And I told her I was going to be doing this, so I'm not embarrassing her. She's doing Majalis in Boston right now, so she's not here today. But I wanted to honor her accomplishment. I was at the biggest academic gathering of scholars of religion in America. It's called the American Academy of Religion Conference. And they have they have hundreds probably of actual smaller panels. They have 4 main panels. One this year was actually done on what they call constructive Muslim theology. And Sister Mahjabeen, Professor Mahjabeen, Sheikha Mahjabeen, Zakira Mahjabeen got up and eloquently represented our community in an amazing way. I literally got chills and tears in my eyes listening to her speak to this crowd of scholars from around the country. So she's a great treasure for our community, mashallah, tabarakallah, and carrying forward the legacy of Fatima and Zainab, as well as other great women scholars such as Dr. Amina Inlows at the Islamic College of Advanced Study in London, Professor Nazmina Danji at the Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham, Sheikha Sabika Mithani here at SABA, Ustada Fatima Merji at Mizan Institute, and many others, and may Allah protect them and increase them. Now, what is this book about? This is the first book in English language contemporary theology that uses the sermon attributed to Sayyidah Fatima when she was demanding her rights of fadak, and saying, what can this teach us about social justice in Islam in the 21st century? How can we, and when she's talking about feminist theology, I've heard her talk about this multiple times, this idea that, in other traditions, maybe someone who grew up Christian, they had to go and look for women voices. But she never felt that way. So when she did her PhD, we did our PhDs at the same school, she didn't have to go look because she grew up on Zainab and she grew up on Fatima, right? And so she just wanted to introduce what Fatima represents to our community to a wider set of Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, secular atheists, scholars of religion, to know what a powerful voice and legacy Sayyidah Fatima has left for our community. Now, some of you may be aware that there's some people question the historical authenticity of the sermon attributed to Sayyidah Fatima. It comes in a text called Balaghatul Nisa by Ibn Abi Tayfur. The thing is that, yes, there's a place for having a conversation about historical authenticity, right? There's a place for having a conversation about, did such and such person actually say this, okay? Right? But there are other things at play when we have those conversations, and namely our intentions for doing so, right? So can I prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt, in a way that I could convince any Jew or Christian or secular atheist who does a PhD in Islamic studies, that Qul Huwallahu Ahad, right, is absolutely, it came at this time in this place? No, I couldn't, right? But does Qul Huwallahu Ahad mean everything to me? Yes, right? Does it mean everything to me because I know that it came out of the Prophet's mouth on this day and in this place? No. Because it says, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allahus Samad, that Allah is the eternal refuge of all human beings. And when I say As-Samad, I feel like everything that I've hoped for and everything that I've dreamed for is contained in that divine name, that He is the one, she is the one, it is the one, Allah is the one, Al-Ahad, Al-Wahid, Allah, the only one, is the one that can hear my prayer, hear my dua, and answer my dreams, and fulfill me and take me away from anything that I fear. Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allahus Samad, right? Yeah, and sure, there's a place. Let's go have an academic conference and talk about when and where maybe Qul Huwallahu Ahad came down, and look at all the narrations and do critical analysis. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. Saifuddin Kara. I don't know. He both has a Hausa education as well as a PhD from the UK. He teaches now in Germany. So he's an alim and also an academic. And he's written some really good books about the transmission of the Quran. And he has another one coming out from Edinburgh University Press. So mashallah, another one of our giants in the English language study of Islam. So yeah, he would be someone who would want to have that kind of detailed academic conversation about transmission. But for me, I learned Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allahus Samad, Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad, wa Lam Yakul Lahu Kufuwan Ahad. I believe that God said it. Khalas, I'm done. You all can go do what you need to do because I'm getting ready to die. So are we, when we're questioning whether Sayyidah Fatima said this part of the speech or that part of the speech, because we know that there was an encounter. You can go, if you have a certain type of mentality, you can go in Bukhari and you can find the record of this encounter. And it says, in that particular version, that she was so angry that she never spoke to the person again. So if that's what you need as your proof, okay, well then just fill in the blank. What was said. So are you questioning its attribution to Sayyidah Fatima because it's a woman speaking? Are you questioning the attribution to Sayyidah Fatima because it's a text that provides a she version of history? It sounds very she. Is that why you're questioning it? Do you not think that the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam could speak that eloquently? It's a beautifully. The book that it's transmitted is about the eloquence of women. Do you just doubt that book because you couldn't imagine that women could speak that eloquently in the Arabic language? Let alone the daughter of the Prophet herself? Do you question that you would have had the courage and the conviction and the strength to stand up in front of a group of men and demand her rights? Is that why you question it? I don't think I'm, talking to the people in this room. I'm talking to more of the people that might watch this on YouTube. So, why are you questioning it? Okay? Right? Because I know for a fact that when I was studying, in a secular version of Islamic studies, and they were questioning whether Qul Huwallahu Ahad was from God, it wasn't to find out the truth. It wasn't because, hey, I believe that I'm going to die one day and answer to my Lord, and I want to be right with my Lord, so I'm really trying to figure out how to do that. It was like, no, I want to be famous because I want to be the person that disproves that the Quran is authentic in the Western world. I want to be famous because I want to be the one that sticks it to the Muslims and says, ha, your own understanding of your own religion is actually faulty. Or whatever it is. I just get excited about questioning religion. I get excited about questioning the literature of Arabic-speaking peoples, Orientalism. Hindus have this problem too. The British went to India and they said, look at these texts, they're so stupid. And then later, scholars came and actually understood the Sanskrit and said, wait a second, actually, there's some very profound things in here. My dissertation in my school begins with a quote from a British colonial official that said, the whole of the native literature of India and Arabia is not worth the shelf of a good European library. Just dismiss the entire history of Islam, the entire history of South Asia in one sentence. So there are people that have that mentality, right? So when they come to, talk about the Quran, you have to be very aware that that's what they're coming from. So yes, there's a place to talk about the authenticity of this sermon, but right now will not be one of those places. So I want to focus on a part towards the end of the sermon, and I'll give the version that's found in a translation from the words of Ayatollah Lutfullah Safi Gulpegani. The translation is again by Sheikh Salim Binji, who I mentioned yesterday. Not surprising, he translates everything, mashallah. You can find it on alislam.org under Fatimiyyah is Ashura. So it has Ayatollah Gulpegani's kind of talk about this idea of Fatimiyyah as Ashura, but then it also has the translation of the Sermon of Fatima in English and Farsi, as well as the original Arabic text, all under the alislam.org thing. Salawat. So towards the end of her speech, she says, "O group of valorous men, the aides of the nation, the helpers of Islam, what is this slackness that you display in regards to me, while you are witnessing the oppression being meted upon me, but you still lie in a deep sleep? Did my father not say that the rights of a father for his children must be considered? How soon have you changed tracks, even though you possess the strength to stand up for my rights and are capable of supporting me regarding my claim? Do you then say that Muhammad has passed away and there remains no responsibility upon us? His loss is great, and the crack that has appeared in Islam is severe and the division is immense. Unity has been shattered, the earth is engulfed in darkness due to his concealment, the sun and the moon have been eclipsed, and the stars have scattered away. Hopes have broken, mountains have crumbled, the family of the Prophet has been lost, and their sanctity has been dishonored after his death. This is by Allah a great calamity and a great adversity. While this calamity is incomparable, and there is no other greater calamity than the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then later on, a little farther towards the end, be aware, I have said what I wanted to say, even though I know that you will not assist me, as this slackness of yours to assist us has become a part of your heart. But all of this complaint is the result of the grief of the heart and the internal rage that I feel, and I know that it is of no use, but I have said this to manifest my internal sorrow and to complete my proof upon you. So as I said yesterday, when I see things in the world, I see Ahlul Kisa in them. So when I read this, just, in terms of reviewing the sermon for this majlis, I thought of those YouTube videos, those TikTok videos, those Instagram videos of people in Gaza saying the same sorts of things. Men, women, children, saying, O Ummah of Muhammad, where are you? They're dropping bombs on my house. Our children are dead under the rubble. Our families are being destroyed. Where are you? You're literally watching it happen. But, Wallahul Musta'an, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. I remember one video I saw of a young man, his brother had just been killed and he was in the hospital and he was just, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. And then he said something like, the leaders of the world have forgotten us, but Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. The proof, the hujjah has been laid upon you. Right? I remember in the early days of October, I was sitting there thinking, how terrible must it be to be an Egyptian fighter pilot? You just sit there every day with your planes on the ground, watching it happen. And either out of fear of your leaders or fear of the enemy or fear of whoever, you just sit there. You're the only one in the world, in the ummah, who's close enough. You're the only one in the world who has the technology to do something, to protect the bombs from dropping, and you don't do anything. I thought, now that's the person I don't want to be. Right? I mean, Allah knows their situations, but that's the person I don't want to be in this world. The person that feels like I can't do anything when I'm the actual one who can do something. And so this is exactly what Sayyidah Fatima is saying to the Ansar at this point in time. She's saying, you are our power base. You are the people that could actually stand up. I remember reading a narration once about Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima going through the streets of Medina saying, who's going to come out and support us? Who's going to be there for us? Who's going to stand up for us? And of course we know that nobody came. I mean, a few came, but not enough. What is systemic injustice? Systemic injustice is when power coalesces with a certain group of people and allows them to inflict injustice upon another people without retribution. Right? No fear. No real fear. Maybe like a false fear. No real fear. We have this idea that, people are going to come and convince you to do the right thing. But we know from human history that so often people don't do the right thing. Why? Because their life is good. it's not really happening to them. They're enjoying their situation. You're sitting in Walnut Creek. You're sitting in Atherton. Unless you just happen to know a Palestinian, it's just so far away. It's not real. So why do anything about it? It's just something happened on TV, and probably you don't even see it on TV because you just watch NBC Nightly News. And it says something like, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken went to Jordan today to discuss the humanitarian situation in Gaza with King Abdullah of Jordan. As if that's what's really going on. Right? Could you imagine if the NBC Nightly News said, American bombs crashed on the families of American citizens in Gaza today. One group of family members actually lost 40 of their own family members today. He lives in Michigan. Alhamdulillah, actually, I did see this on CNN. There have been a couple articles on CNN. Surprised at how it happened, but presumably there's somebody in the organization that is pushing it. But it was actually an interview with two family members. I want to say one was in Jersey and one was in Michigan. Palestinians, 20s, 30s, I think, talking about 40 members of their family being killed. So I was having a conversation with older white Americans, non-Muslims, and they were saying, oh, it's so awful what's happening, but they were talking more about the other side. And I said, do you know that I know people who have lost family members? And they've lost family members knowing that the government of the country that they live in has no problem with the fact that their bombs and their money and their diplomatic support is what rained destruction down upon their own family. And they were just shocked. They were like, are you serious? Really? And it made me realize that a lot of people in America just don't know, right? They just don't know. And as long as they don't know, as long as they don't see the images, nobody watches Al Jazeera in America. I watch Al Jazeera on Sling, right? But nobody watches Al Jazeera in America, except maybe the intelligence agencies. And, they don't see that stuff. If they saw that stuff, maybe they would change their mind. Just the way that when I was a 10-year-old boy with my sensitive heart and I saw Mississippi burning, I freaked out. Because if your heart is alive, you can't see those things and not shed tears. You can't see those things and not feel the burning in your heart. You can't, they say that the biggest thing that sort of affected the mainstream white American populace in America in the 1960s was the televised representation, video shots, news shots of the brutality of the police in the Jim Crow South against the black people and the marchers that were marching in solidarity with them. When they saw them sicking dogs upon them, when they saw them shooting high-powered, like when the fire department comes and they have the hose and it's super high-powered, shooting that strong of water at, can you just take everything, please? Thanks. That shooting the water at people and so hard that it's literally knocking them over, or throwing them back against a wall, yelling at them, cussing at them, throwing rocks at them, right? There are people around this country that just didn't know that that was the reality. And it sounds silly to say now, right? But if you're living out in some village in South Dakota, right, and you've never seen a black person in your life, right, you have no idea what it was like in Mississippi. You had no idea what it was like in Alabama, right? And then all of a sudden now on the news, you're seeing it, and you're like, whoa. And, that whole 60s generation and all the things that they went through and all the changes that happened in American society, so much of it was due to the fact that people actually saw things that they never saw before. Right? So people don't know what's happening to the Palestinians. People don't know what's happening to the Rohingya people, right? Including our Shia Muslim community. I've been to the Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh. They have 1 million people. They were genocided out of Rakhine State in Myanmar. And when you talk to them, they have the worst stories you've ever heard. Worst. There are children here, so I can't repeat it. But just think of the worst, most terrible things that would happen to children, to women, to young girls. Everybody had that story. Muslims. It had been happening systematically and systemically since the early 80s when they were originally denied citizenship and said that they were interlopers into Myanmar society, into Burmese society. And so now flash forward to 2017 when the last time they were pushed out and basically 1 million left. And they just, literally just scorched earth policy, just entire villages destroyed, whole families decimated, 1 million people pushed out. And for the last 6 years, what have they asked for from the international community around the world? About $960 million. Think of a city that runs on a budget of $960 million for 1 million people. You know what the budget is for the city of Oakland for 450,000 people? And Oakland's not a rich city. Billions. And they can't get it. They can't get the 950 million. They can get 600, 700 million to keep 1 million people alive who have been genocided. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, the Turks, they're there. When I was there are a lot of Turkish flags. I don't know the connection between the Rohingya and the Turks, but mashallah. Where's the Shia Muslim community, right? Is it because they're not Shia? No. I think it's just because we don't know. It's not been presented to us as part of our responsibility to be there for our Rohingya brothers and sisters. The way that Palestinians have been presented as part of our responsibility. And that's not to say that, we're terrible people because we didn't do that. No, but it's to say that the same thing that we see happening to the Palestinians happened to the Rohingya. And just because they're not in the Middle East, just because they're darker skinned, just because they don't speak Arabic, I don't know. I don't know all the answers. But there's the questions that we should ask ourselves. Why don't they get any attention? Right? And then we could talk about many other groups of Muslims around the world as well. But all these people have been victims of systemic injustice, right? In the case of Palestine, we know it's Israel and America, and to a lesser extent, the European Union. In the case of the Rohingya, it's, the military junta, the military that's called the Tatmadaw of Myanmar, and their backing from China. And in other cases, right, we're talking about, I mentioned in this book again, Black Women's History of the United States. It's not a surprise that if the people that have always been the President of the United States of America, with the exception of Barack Hussein Obama, was a white male, Christian, that to be a black woman in the United States of America has been a very difficult situation, right? Because the power coalesces with a particular group of people. And if you're Thomas Jefferson, and you don't fear what's going to happen, except maybe what the other white men might say, you can do what you can want, for those of you who know that story. Now, as Shia, and this goes back to what I was saying about cumulative tradition, right? Our personal faith is that we want to be on the side of justice. But our cumulative tradition is such that we can't always say that we're blameless, right? When we look to the ma'asumeen, right, we say, yes, they're blameless. Sayyidah Fatima is blameless. Imam Hussein is blameless, so on and so forth, right? But just because we're Shia, does that mean we cannot be people who inflict systemic injustice upon others? Of course not. We're not ma'asum, right? We can be duped by shaitan. We can give in to our nafs. We can value the dunya over the akhirah. We can value our good life and our privileges over other people's rights and other people's needs. Of course. Right? And since every single one of us in this room is not ma'asum, these words are for us, myself included. Right? And I use the example of white men because I am a white man. So if I can't hold myself to account, ala anfusikum. If I can't hold myself to account as a white man in America, then what am I even doing here on the minbar? The example of the Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali, may peace be upon both of them, is that power can be wielded with justice and can be wielded on behalf of God in human society, in human history. We're not Buddhists or Jains whose founders were ascetics, unmarried, nonviolent. These were military leaders. We are proud of Imam Ali's military exploits at Badr and Uhud and Khaybar and Hunayn. He is Asadullah. He is the lion of Allah, and we're proud of that. Right? But we, in our particular situation, we can't be military leaders. It's just not part of our particular situation. Our situation here in the United States of America involves our individual and collective confrontation of the systemic injustices of this time and of this place, right? Bringing forth as much of that mujahada, as much of that, as they say in English, martial spirit, as much as that jihad and nafs, that we are moved by words like Sayyidah Fatima's to say, no, I want to be there. I want to show up. I want to be on the right side. Whether it's in my heart, whether it's with my words, whether it's with my money, whether it's with my privileges, whether it's with my prestige. How do we do that? How do we do that? We have to be creative. It's not simple, right? All of this, mashallah, tabarakallah, everyone who contributed to all of this, Allah bless you. This building, this space where we can come together and you can speak Arabic, you can speak Farsi, you can speak English. Inshallah, one day we'll have a Spanish majlis. We have the space, you know, and we have the growing numbers. Maybe I should learn Spanish, but it wouldn't be very good. Gringo talk. That's like white man, bad speaking Spanish. ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? That means where's the library? A la izquierda. Anyways. You know, mashallah, it was the creativity and the effort that make all of this possible. Nobody built this for us. You built it. You came up with the ideas. We strategized. You know, we made the efforts. The brother's good at media. If you ask me to do the video, it'd come out like junk. You know, somebody's good at making the food. Somebody's good at thinking about schooling. Somebody's good at thinking about the accounting. Somebody does the legal work, right? But it's all for the same purpose. So similarly, when we're confronting systemic injustice, individually and collectively, there's not necessarily going to be an easy blueprint for everyone to follow. I'll give you an example. The masjid in Oakland, ICCNC, Islamic Cultural Center in Northern California, asked me to do 6 khutbahs at the beginning of the year for Salatul Jummah. So I thought about, okay, I'm in Oakland. This is the first time. I give occasional khutbahs before, but now I'm going to do 6 in a row. What do? Well, what I did was I took the idea of a land acknowledgement. Some of you may be familiar with this, where people acknowledge the fact that the land that we're sitting on, there were people here before us. And for all we know, their bones might be underneath us, and their blood might be in the soil. We don't know, right? Because, again, when we're talking about history, we're talking about first, in this area, the Spanish Empire that came here and established the missions. And as many of you know, so many people died in that process, right? And then, after it became part of Mexico, and then it became part of the United States of America, there was a genocide. There's a book called American Genocide, written by a professor at UCLA about this. There's another book called Murder State, written by another professor of history in California, about the genocide that happened during the gold rush, right? Literally, people would take guns and they'd go out into the wilderness, out into some of you go into the Sierra Nevadas, go camping or hiking. They would go out there and with guns, and if they find 300 Native Americans, they just shoot them and did other things as well, which I won't repeat. And we know some of it and we don't know other things about it, right? That was 170 years ago in this place. And even Gavin Newsom has used the word genocide for California, right? It may not be the same in other parts of America, right? Each tribe has a different history, right? But I'm saying in the case of California, in the 1850s, it is documented. There are 500-page books with in super intricate footnotes to prove that there was a genocide in California, right? And so what do we do about that? I don't know, right? But if we have to be aware of it to begin to do something about it. So my first khutbah was about this. What is the history of the land of Oakland, and what is our responsibility to that history? Because we are part of it now, right? This is our masjid, this is our building, and so therefore we are part of this place, and we have a responsibility to that history of this place. I mean, in the case of the East Bay, they have something called the Shumi land tax, where the one Native American group encourages people who own property in the East Bay, Berkeley, Oakland in particular, to pay a little bit to their nonprofit as a sort of recognition of the genocide that happened so that they can try and rebuild some sort of community. So that's something, It may not be the revolution, right? But it's something. Also, I have an article, you can find it online. It's called One Out of Many. It's an academic article, so it has, footnotes and everything. But what I tried to do was talk about how we conceptualize Islamic law in America. And I gave an example of an organization called Believers Bail Out. Now, Believers Bail Out is in Chicago, or in the state of Illinois, and what they do is they take money that's been earmarked as zakat, and they use that for freeing people from cash bail, right? So if you're brought in and they say, you committed a crime, they hold you in the jail under cash bail. They say, if you want to get out, you got to pay the court $10,000. If not, you got to sit in jail and what's called pretrial incarceration. And so they take money and they go and they find Muslims who are in pretrial incarceration and they get them out so that they can be back with their families before the trial. And it's part of a larger movement in America, about criminal justice reform and about the prison system and all of that. And that's a whole nother series of lectures that I'm not really qualified to give. But the point is that they found a way to be creative and to use their religious values and to say, how can we use, they're predominantly Sunnis, right? So they collect a lot in zakat money, right? So how can we find a way to use this zakat money to help people in our communities in a creative way? And this was one of them. And every year they've been able to raise $300,000, $400,000 on Launch Good, which is, many of you may know, is a Muslim fundraising platform. And so this is an example of how to be creative, right? But that creativity has to come with courage. That creativity has to come with a real analysis of the situation on the ground. How many of you know that the United States House of Representatives and Senate have passed an $886 billion military spending bill in the last week? $886 billion the largest military spending bill in American history, more than the next 10 countries on this planet Earth combined. And you know what? Our sister, Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman of Michigan, she voted against it. And she publicly said, "I voted against this massively wasteful budget for war and destruction. We must divest from endless war and death." Don't you want to see politicians that speak like that? Don't you want to see elected officials who speak like that? Alhamdulillah, I'm from Barbara Lee's district. We're very proud that she was the one person who voted against the authorization of force in Iraq many years ago, 20 years ago. And she has also been, for example, at the forefront of the ceasefire resolution as well. So we can have people that actually speak the truths in halls of power that we believe in. But they will be marginal. If you understand American history, they will be marginal. They will be marginalized. They censured Rashida Tlaib. The one Palestinian in the entire, it was 532 people between the House and the Senate. They censured her. They tried to censure her for speaking up on behalf of her people. You don't think that takes incredible courage? I mean, mashallah, tabarakallah. To have that courage to say, I'm gonna be that one voice. When I was a chaplain at Brown University, which is an Ivy League university in Providence, Rhode Island, there was something called the Costs of War Project. And it was an actual, in the School of International Studies, to understand what happened with the post-9/11 wars. On their website, more than 432,000 civilians have been killed in the fighting since 2001. Millions of people living in the war zones have also been displaced by war. The U.S. post-9/11 wars have forcibly displaced at least 38 million people in and from Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, the Philippines, Libya, and Syria. This number exceeds the total displaced by every war since 1900, except for World War II. Right? So what is happening in Gaza right now is just a continuation of what's been happening for the last 22 years. Right? And if we're not clear about that, I'd like to think that we are in this room, those on YouTube, are you clear about that? Other masjids around the country, what is actually the truth of the situation, right? So you have to be aware of the reality of the situation in order to then be courageously and creatively confront it. But here's the main thing. There is no promise of a great life for following this path. If anyone deserved a great life in this world, it was the Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali and Sayyida Fatima and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein and Sayyida Zainab and Sayyida Kulthum. If they didn't get it, why do we expect so much? Why do we expect so much of safety and security and ease and prosperity and opportunities and love and romance and fun, which are all great? None of that's haram. It's all good. It's all blessings of Allah. But if you choose that over striving in Allah, striving in the way of Allah, striving towards the nearness of the Ahlul Kisa, then something is wrong. And that's why we have these moments like Muharram and Fatimiyyah and Jum'ah and Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan, to remind us of that reality. For all I know, I may go have a very nice day tomorrow, mashallah. And maybe you will too, and I hope you do. Right? And that's totally fine. But we also have to have moments where we have those gut check moments. And gut check not necessarily because we're forced into it. Right? When Sayyidah Fatima is saying these words to the Ansar, it's like a last-ditch effort. It's like, now the rubber's hitting the road. Are you going to stand with me? No. Okay. I've made my point. Bayt al-Ahsan. House of sorrows now. What if we purposely choose to be on the right side before we're forced to be on the right side? Right? What if the person from Mecca says, you know what? I'm going to Medina. I'm not going to wait for the Medina to come to me. And I say that as a person who grew up without any of this. And I had to choose all of this. I had to find all of this. Nobody laid it on a platter for me. So if I can do it. Anybody can do it. Any Joe or Sally in America, right, can find their way to this. Why? Because as the verses I said from last night, لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Right? The Prophet Muhammad is a blessed example and a good example for the one who hopes in Allah and in the last day. Right? Not in the dunya. Why? Because this earth wasn't designed to hold all of our hopes and dreams. Right? I think I said something like this, in a previous gathering, I can't remember precisely where. But if we think that Ali al-Akbar lost the opportunity for a good life at Karbala, what a tragedy. He could have grown old, and he could have had a family, and he could have fallen in love, and he could have done so much ibadah, all these things. We miss the whole point of the story. That when Ali al-Akbar goes out, even though he's young, he knows that this is his time. And he's not afraid, because the one that he worships is the one that can make anything possible in this world, who has said that khayrun wa abqa, better and more lasting is that which is in the next life. So just as somebody works so hard so they can become a doctor in this year, and they go to 12 years of primary schooling, and then 4 years of college, and then 4 years of medical school, and then 3 years of residency, and then 1 year of fellowship, till finally they're actually a doctor. Why? So that they can make a couple $100,000 a year, and their father is happy with their life. Good job, son. You worked day in, day out, 60 days a week, 70 days a week, 100 days a week when you're in residency. So you could have a couple $100,000 a year in social prestige from your community? And you won't wake up for Salatul Fajr when God has promised you Jannah that is vaster than the heavens and the earth? Like, what's wrong? Do you not believe what Allah is telling you? Do you not believe what Ali Akbar showed you? I'm saying these things to myself. I'm not, just be very clear, I'm not like talking to you, at you, as if like you're the ones. I'm talking to myself as someone who's trying to give myself more himmah, trying to give myself more opportunity. Actually, sometimes I do this in private by myself. I talk to myself this way. So anyways, to close, this earth was not made for that. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. He created death and life to see which of you will be the best in deeds, which of you will respond in the best of ways. And maybe that best of way isn't something really flashy. Maybe it's actually sitting there in dua after you watch some YouTube video and you're just tears streaming down your eyes, and you're saying, I don't even know this person. Ya Allah, bless them with Jannah. Bless them with their children with Jannah. Bless them reuniting with their children in Jannah. Give them Jannatul Firdaus, and give them the company of Sayyidah Fatima, and give them the company of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you know what? Maybe that dua that you'll probably forget about a year from now, maybe that's the thing that's going to bring you into Jannah. Because there was nothing in it but ikhlas. There's nothing in it but that person is dealing with the same existential reality that I face, and I love them for the sake of Allah, and I want the best for them for the sake of Allah. For example, I felt that way. There was a video of the woman whose daughters were killed in the bomb in southern Lebanon, and she was being interviewed in the hospital bed, and one of the most amazing interviews I've ever seen in my life. And I was just like, Ya Allah, Give that woman Jannah. Reunite her with her children. Give her the greatest of rewards that you can give to any of your ibad, any of your servants on this earth. I can't remember what her name is, but Allah grant her all that. So when we are confronting this reality, when we are confronting systemic injustice, we are beginning with the recognition that we need to get fired up to do the jihad and nafs in ourselves that gives us the clarity, gives us the courage that then we can then bring out into society in creative ways. Because think about what Sayyidah Fatima said at the end of the sermon. Be aware. I have said what I wanted to say. Even though I know that you will not assist me, as this slackness of yours to assist us has become a part of your heart. This slackness of yours to assist us, meaning Ahlul Kisa, has become a part of your heart. But all of this complaint is the result of the grief of the heart and the internal rage that I feel, and I know that it is of no use, but I have said this to manifest my internal sorrow and to complete my proof upon you. These nights are not to teach history, they are to prepare us to make history. As it says in the Quran, تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That was a nation that passed away before you. They have what they earned, and you'll have what you earned. And you won't be asked about what they did. Right? So we reflect on this history so that we maybe become people, inshallah ta'ala, with Allah's tawfiq, that can make history. So that the people that come after us will say, they did something with their lives. If we can lower the light. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum ya Ahl Bayt al-Nubuwwah wa Mawdi' al-Rasalah. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum ya Imam Ali al-Murtada. Assalamu alayki ya Sayyidat Nisa al-Alamin ya Zahra. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the last 2 nights, we've allowed our imagination to carry us to Medina. And in each moment, we've tried to focus on a different aspect of the life and the legacy and the teachings of Sayyidah Fatima. In this moment, I would like you to try and imagine the bare floor of Masjid al-Nabi. I would like you to try to imagine the thatched roof, the woven date palms that most likely made up the roof. I would like you to imagine the simple environment of 7th century Arabia. And I would like you to imagine the sense of heaviness that had fallen over the Muslim community with the passing of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. As it says in the Sermon of Fatima, this was the greatest of calamities. And it hit especially hard on the family of the Prophet. We know from narrations, and as far as I know, there's no dispute about this, that Imam Ali alayhi salam stayed with the body. He stayed with the body 1 day, 2 days. When we look in Muslim history, we see stories in cities like Baghdad of 30, 40, 50,000 people coming out to honor the passing of some scholar, some pious person. But when we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see no such story about his passing. No such story where the community was able to fully grieve. The community came out by the thousands to pay their respect to the one who had led them for 23 years. But Imam Ali was there. Imam Ali was with the body. And we know that as the days and nights unfolded, it became clear that Sayyidah Fatima would not receive the lands of Fadak. And so we see, as I mentioned in the narration of Al-Bukhari, that she went to the masjid and she went to get her rights. And we see in the sermon of Fatima, which I only read a little bit for the benefit of our community, that she spoke very eloquently and very passionately in defense of her rights. And in that moment, we feel the same thing that we feel on Ashura. We feel, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuzu wallahi fawzan azima. Ya Sayyidah Fatima, woe unto us, we wish that we could have been with you. We wish that when you called out for helpers from the Ansar, we could have been Labayka ya Zahra, Labayka ya Zahra, Labayki ya Zahra, Labayki ya Zahra. But at the very least, Ya Zahra, we have gathered in your name on this night and the two previous nights to remember you. And we do so recognizing, as on previous nights, that the suffering and the tribulations and the trials that you had to bear are something that reminds us of the suffering and the tribulations and the trials that have been borne by so many human beings across this earth. Right? That you and your family are the answer to the question of how we can deal with the suffering of this earth, because you dealt with it. And so at the same time that we have mourning in our hearts and we have grief in our hearts about what befell you and your family, and we shed tears for that, we also find within our hearts, Ya Zahra, an immense strength and an immense zeal and an immense fire to live our lives year in and year out with the remembrance of you and with the challenge that you laid before us to be helpers unto you to get your rights. And so, Ya Zahra, on this night, as heavy as our hearts are, as heavy as our hearts are for the memory of what befell you and your children, and the way in which it tears us up inside at times, and the way in which we see it in the suffering of mothers around the world, but particularly right now in the suffering of mothers in Gaza, and that their children are crushed. And that reminds us of you. And that their calling out for help reminds us of your calling out for help. And their tears remind us of your tears. And their deaths remind us of your death, Ya Zahra. We know and we feel it all the time that the tears we shed and the pain that we feel is also that which keeps our hearts alive, so that our hearts don't become dead the way that is mentioned at the end of your sermon. That our hearts don't become hardened, that we become people that can look at suffering and just move on from it. But no, we take it into our being and we allow it to inspire us, and we allow it to fill our lives, and we allow it to give us a zeal to fight the fight, a zeal to believe that Allah is there. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. When Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, according to the Quran, at the end of his life, after the reconciliation had happened with his family, he made a dua and he said, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَنْتَ وَلِي فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ تَوَفَّنِي مُسْلِمًا وَالْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. Originator of heavens and earth, you have been my protecting friend in this world, and you will be my protecting friend in the next life. You were the one who was with me when I was thrown in the well, when I was sold into slavery, when I was falsely accused, when I was thrown into prison, and now that I've made it through the trial, you are the one who was always with me, and you are the one who will be with me in the hereafter. So let me die in a state of submission to you, and let me join with the righteous. So everything we are doing, Ya Zahra, everything we are doing is so that we may die in a state of submission and we may be joined to you and your family, Ya Zahra. Labayki Ya Zahra. Labayki Ya Zahra. Labayki Ya Zahra. Labayki Ya Sayyidata Nisa'il Alameen. O Master of all the women of all realms. And we thank you for speaking so eloquently and laying the hujjah upon us so that we may be guided in the midst of our trials and our tribulations. And that we know that if we lose children, we don't lose hope. If we lose our place in society, we don't lose hope. If people turn against us, we don't lose hope. If people bomb us in our masjids, we don't lose hope. If people slaughter us in the name of Islam, we don't lose hope. No matter what happens, Ya Zahra, you have taught us not to lose hope. Your children have taught us not to lose hope. And that is the greatest gift we could ever imagine being given. And that is the gift that we want to give to the entire world. So that this entire planet Earth knows that God is always there, and that God is the God of justice. And whether it comes now or it comes later, it will come. So board the ark now before it's too late. The Safinat al-Najah, the ark of salvation. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, Ya Sami', Ya Basir, Ya Alim, Ya Khabir, the one who knows every single one of us in our situation. Ya Allah, we ask you in this moment, by the rank and the stature of the Ahlul Kisa, and in particular Sayyidah Fatima, that you make us their Shia. That you make us their Shia haqqan, not in name, but in truth. People that cannot be defeated because they are our imams. People that you can kill us, you can crush us, you can take away our children, you can take away everything, but we will never give up because our imams are Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein. And people who have them as their leaders can never be defeated in this world or the hereafter. That is our dua on this night. That is what we want from you, Allah, and the outcome of these 3 nights that we've gathered here. Please accept everything that we have done in your name, whether known or unknown, whether publicly or privately, whether individually or collectively, whether hidden or manifest. But Ya Allah, by any of those good deeds that we have done over these last 3 days, we ask that you accept this dua, that we are Shia haqqan, that we are people that are the servants of the servants of the servants of Sayyidah Fatima and her family. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for letting us be here. We thank you whether we're a white or black or Latino or Persian or Iranian or Pakistani or Indian or Iraqi or Bahraini or whatever we are, that we were here this night and in this place striving to be Shia, right? That we would be the people that would be attached to people like Sayyidah Fatima and those throughout this cumulative tradition of Fatimiyyah, throughout these 1400 years, that will never give up the remembrance of these people and what they went through for our sake, so that we could be guided, so that we could have hope, so that we could hope in Allah in the last day in a way that faces all of the injustice and all of the oppression on this planet Earth, because the best of the creation had to do it too. So we thank you, Ya Allah, for making us Muslims. We thank you for making us mu'mins, and we ask that you make us real Shia. Ya Allah, La ilaha illa ant, subhanak, inni kuntu min al-zalimin. Allah bless all of the marhumeen who have gathered here, all of the ancestors, known and unknown, of the people that are gathered here. Ya Allah, you know every single one of them in the barzakh. We ask that for all of them, that you bless them with this Fatiha that we're about to recite after we say Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين يا أرحم الراحمين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Thank you so much. Ya Hussein. Please come forward, inshallah. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. All together. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Ya Fatima. میزنم تکون میخوره. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Come forward, who's here? Ya Fatima. Bien, Ya Zahra. Come forward, come forward, come forward. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. MashaAllah. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. Ya Zahra, Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatima. MashaAllah. Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra. In the middle of night while everyone is sleeping in Medina. In the middle of night while everyone is sleeping in Medina. Ali and his children are coming back from the grave of Fatima. Ali and his children are coming back from the grave of Fatima. After the Prophet died, the Muslims betrayed Ali and Fatima. After the Prophet died, the Muslims betrayed Ali and Fatima. Sold their faith, broke their promise, and took away Fadak of Fatima. Sold their faith, broke their promise, and took away Fadak of Fatima. Called themselves Khalifatullah. Called themselves Khalifatullah. But they betrayed Waliullah. But they betrayed Waliullah. The killing of Fatima was the reward of Rasulullah. The killing of Fatima was the reward of Rasulullah. الصديقة الشاهدة الطاهرة الزاكية. Everyone. الصديقة الشاهدة الطاهرة الزاكية. يا فاطمة يا فاطمة يا فاطمة. All your voices. يا فاطمة ما شاء الله. يا فاطمة يا فاطمة يا فاطمة. Together. الصديقة الشاهدة. Everyone, everyone. الصديقة الشاهدة الطاهرة الزاكية. Your voices. الطاهرة الزاكية. يا فاطمة يا ما شاء الله. يا فاطمة. Connect with your mother. Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima. MashaAllah. Grief and heaviness can still be felt in the city of Medina. Grief and heaviness can still be felt in the city of Medina. Since the day of Saqifa, when they oppressed Ali and Fatima. Since the day of Saqifa, when they oppressed Ali and Fatima. Without any shame they burned down the door of the house of Fatima. Without any shame they burned down the door of the house of Fatima. They said Qurbatan ilallah and then killed Muhsin of Fatima. They said Qurbatan ilallah and then killed Muhsin of Fatima. They killed Aziz Mustafa. They killed Aziz Mustafa. They killed the wife of Murtada. They killed the wife of Murtada. They killed Sayyidatun Nisa. They're the enemies of Allah. They're the enemies of high. They killed Aziz Mustafa. They killed Aziz Mustafa. They killed the wife of Murtada. They killed Sayyidatun Nisa. They're the enemies of Allah. Say with me. They're the enemies of. One more time. They're the enemies of يا الصديقة الشهيدة سيد الطاهرة الزكية ما شاء الله الصديقة الشهيدة الطاهرة الزكية يا فاطمة يا فاطمة يا فاطمة يا فاطمة ما شاء الله يا فاطمة يا فاطمة يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك 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 يا فاطمة everyone صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة صلى الله ما شاء الله يا فاطمة صلى الله يا فاطمة if no one else will mourn you with me I'll mourn you alone your broken ribs and your burning home all this love and solace of you is known the tablet and the pen attest to you the secrets of secrets rested with you Allah sent from the throne blessings to you ayah after ayah came in your name sallallahu alayki ya Fatima sallallahu alayki يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة ما شاء الله صلى الله Fatima, how did the door to heaven fall victim unto the flames? How did they look at you with no shame? How they raised their voices and said your name? Alhamdulillah, as much as the pain. Alhamdulillah for my every pain. Alhamdulillah, you gave me Hussein. Alhamdulillah حمد الشاكرين صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة وعليك يا فاطمة ما شاء الله صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة عليك يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء ما شاء الله يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء يا زهراء Let me get your voices. Ya Zahra, 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 Ya Zahra. Ya Zahra, 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 Ya Zahra. حيدر أمير المؤمنين حيدر أمير المؤمنين 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 أمير أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله. We know your heart is broken, our dear prophet, over the tragedy of your beloved daughter. We know that your ummah, your nation, the people around you betrayed you, broke your heart, turned their back on your family. Inshallah, we won't be the same, Ya Allah. Inshallah, we will join our Imam, the Imam of our time, inshallah, Ya Rasul Allah. Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء يا سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين. Your voice says وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن يا شريك القرآن، أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، ورحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.